I didn't go looking for the forest. The forest found me. It started with a letter, an actual handwritten letter, delivered without a stamp, placed in the center of my apartment floor. I don't know how it got there. The building has security, cameras, and neighbors, but there it was, tucked neatly inside a moss green envelope, smelling faintly of pine. Inside, a single page. You've been chosen. 1 night in Black Hollow Forest. Survive until dawn, and the debt is paid. Arrival expected, midnight, rules enclosed. There were 6 of them, typed on yellowing paper in crisp serif font. Enter only between 11:59 p.m. and 12:01 a.m. No earlier, no later. Walk clockwise once around the forest's inner path. Stop if the trees start whispering. If you see a white doe, do not follow it. Avoid the tree with the red ribbons. Do not touch it. Do not speak near it. At exactly 3:33 a.m., bury your name beneath the oldest oak. If a voice offers you a way out before sunrise, say nothing. Keep walking. I read them 5 times before setting the paper down. This had to be a prank. Maybe my ex is trying to get into my head again, or a viral marketing stunt, but something about it felt ancient. It didn't read like fiction. It read like a warning. Still, I wasn't thinking clearly. The rent was overdue. My power had been cut for 2 days. If this was real, and there was any truth to the debt is paid line, I figured 1 night in the woods wasn't the worst gamble. And that's how I ended up driving to a place not listed on any GPS. No signal, no directions, just a winding road off Route 22 that didn't exist on my map. The trees started thickening almost immediately. Tall, narrow trunks, no underbrush, no wildlife, just silence. When I reached a small wooden arch etched with the words Black Hollow, I checked my watch. 11:58 p.m. I waited. At 11:59 exactly, I stepped through. The air changed instantly. It didn't feel like I entered a different place. It felt like I was no longer on Earth at all. The temperature dropped. The wind stopped. Even my breathing sounded muffled like the forest swallowed sound. The path was clear, packed dirt winding into an enormous circle. I started walking, clockwise as instructed. The rules felt more real now. They weren't just guidelines, they were survival instructions. At first, the walk was uneventful. Just trees, spaced too perfectly to be natural. I kept my steps even, counting them out loud to stay grounded. But after maybe 10 minutes, something odd happened. The bark started to change. At first, I thought it was just my eyes adjusting. But no, each tree had patterns, almost symbols, etched into its trunk. Not carved, grown. The whorls and cracks formed loops, circles, spirals. They moved subtly, like they were breathing. Then came the sound. It wasn't a breeze, it was voices. Not human, not language, just murmurs. The kind you hear when you press a seashell to your ear, or when people pray softly in different tongues. It came from everywhere. I froze. Rule 2. Stop if the trees start whispering. I stood still for what felt like hours, though my watch said 4 minutes passed. The whispers faded slowly, like something was gliding through the trees just beyond sight. When the silence returned, I moved again, carefully. As I turned a bend, I spotted something pale just ahead, glowing faintly between 2 trees. A white shape, moving, graceful, a deer. Its body was narrow and perfect, fur gleaming like frost. It stared at me with black, glassy eyes. And then it took a step backward into the trees, inviting me. Rule 3 flashed in my mind like a scream. Do not follow the white doe. I stood there, breath held, eyes locked with it. For a moment, I wanted to. I wanted to step off the path and trail after it, to see where it went, to disappear into the trees and not come back. But I didn't. I held my ground, and just like that, the doe turned and vanished. No sound, no trace. The forest returned to stillness. I completed my loop around the inner path and found myself back where I'd started. The wooden arch behind me was now gone. There was no exit. I checked my watch. 12:49 a.m., 5 hours and 11 minutes to go, and the next rule was about a tree tied in red ribbons. I hadn't seen it yet, but I knew it was waiting, somewhere deeper in the dark. I stood there for a long time, breathing in the silence like it was trying to drown me. The circle path behind me felt safer, familiar, like something that had recognized me, tolerated me, but only because I followed the rules. Now I was off it. Not breaking a rule exactly, but this next part, the part about the tree with the red ribbons, meant I had to keep moving deeper. I don't remember when the forest began to feel wrong. Not scary, not loud, just wrong. Maybe it was the way the trees tilted, not leaning toward sunlight but slightly inward, like they were watching, or the way the path changed. It was still dirt, but now it pulsed with a strange copper hue, almost like dried blood under moonlight. Each step sounded louder. I could hear the gravel crunch beneath my boots like it was inside my skull. I kept walking. No destination, no map, just the fourth rule circling my thoughts like a predator. Avoid the tree with the red ribbons. Do not touch it. Do not speak near it. That meant it was out there. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a certainty. And when I saw it, I understood why. The tree was massive, far larger than any other in the forest. Its trunk was wide enough to swallow a car, and its bark was black. Not dark brown, not scorched, just black. As if it had been pulled from the bottom of the ocean or the core of something that hated light. And it was wrapped. Dozens of red ribbons wound around it, from the base to the lower branches, like it had been tied up and bound down by someone who wanted it to stay put, or someone who knew it couldn't. I froze. I hadn't stepped off the path, yet somehow there it was, just 10 feet to my right. The air around it was different, heavier, charged, like a storm about to speak, and then something made it worse. The ribbons moved, just slightly. They fluttered. There was no wind. I swear to you, there was no wind. Everything else was still, but the red cloth rippled like it had its own breath. I turned my body slightly, keeping my eyes on it as I tried to move past. I didn't speak. I didn't touch it. But something in my chest whispered to me, "Say its name." The thought didn't feel like my own. It pressed into my skull from somewhere outside, like the forest had a voice and it was learning how to shape words. Say its name. I clenched my jaw and walked faster. The path narrowed around me, trees closing in on either side like ribs from some colossal beast. But I didn't look back. I didn't breathe too loudly. And I didn't speak. A few minutes later, the pressure eased. The air cleared. The cold that had settled into my skin started to recede. I dared a glance behind me. The tree was gone, but the ribbons weren't. One of them was hanging from my wrist. I didn't feel it wrap around me. I didn't hear it snap. But there it was, a frayed strip of crimson cloth tied in a perfect bow, snug just below my palm like a gift from something I'd just escaped. Panic hit me hard. Was this a rule break? I hadn't touched the tree, but the tree had touched me. I fumbled for the knot, trying to untie it, but the ribbon wouldn't loosen. The more I pulled, the tighter it seemed to cling. My skin started to itch beneath it, burn even. And then came the sound. Footsteps, not mine, not behind me, not beside me, above me. I looked up, nothing, but the sound came again. Crunch, 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 like something pacing along invisible branches in the canopy. I aimed my flashlight straight up, the beam flickering wildly between tangled limbs, but nothing was there. Just the creak of wood and the slow, steady rhythm of something watching from above. I kept walking, slowly, deliberately. The ribbon refused to let go, but I could still move. I could still follow the rules. I hadn't spoken near it. I hadn't acknowledged it. Not really. So why did it feel like the forest had marked me? The path split ahead. One trail dipped down into a fog-choked gully. The other rose up a hill lined with trees so straight and identical they looked like copy-pasted pixels. There were no signs, no markings, but my gut whispered a direction. The high road. I took it. The farther I walked, the more distant the tree felt. The ribbon didn't burn anymore. It just pulsed now, slow and warm, like a second heartbeat wrapped around my wrist. I glanced at my watch. 2:37 a.m., 56 minutes until the next rule. At exactly 3:33 a.m., bury your name beneath the oldest oak. And suddenly, that rule didn't feel symbolic. It felt urgent, like maybe the forest hadn't just marked me. Maybe it knows my name now, and it needed me to give it up before it was too late. The forest had gone still again. Stillness in this place wasn't peaceful. It was threatening, like the quiet breath a predator takes before it pounces. My wrist still itched from the ribbon, not painful, not anymore, just constant, like it was reminding me of the rules, of the tree, of the fact that even if I hadn't broken the forest's laws, it had now wrapped its laws around me. I checked my watch. 3 a.m., 31 minutes left. At exactly 3:33 a.m., bury your name beneath the oldest oak. It sounded like folklore, symbolic. But after everything I'd seen, I didn't dare treat it like a metaphor. It was a command, a ritual, and failing it felt like an invitation for something worse. So I walked. Faster now. The path before me had changed again. It no longer curved. No more playful bends or dreamy detours. It was straight, directer, like the forest wanted me to find the oak. That should have scared me more than it did. After 15 minutes of hard walking, I saw it. The tree stood alone in a clearing, wider than any clearing I'd passed through yet. Its trunk was impossibly thick, at least 8 feet across. Its roots jutted from the soil like claws gripping the earth to keep from being dragged away. There was no plaque, no sign, but I knew this was it. The oldest oak. It felt like walking into the center of a cathedral. The canopy stretched above me like a living dome, filtering moonlight in soft silver streaks. And the air, it pulsed, almost reverently. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped into the clearing. The weight of something unseen pushed gently against my chest. Not painful, just expectant. 3:24 a.m. I dropped to my knees. I didn't have a trowel or shovel, so I clawed at the dirt with my bare hands. The soil here was soft, too soft. It gave way easily, almost as if it had been dug up before. Over and over, like names had been buried here before mine. When I'd made a shallow hole, I reached into my back pocket and pulled out the only thing I had with my name on it, my driver's license. I hesitated. It felt like giving something away. But that was the point, wasn't it? The ribbon pulsed once, stronger this time, urging. I placed the card in the hole and buried it quickly, covering it with trembling hands. I pressed the dirt flat and sat back, waiting, unsure if I was supposed to say something. Then I heard it, breathing, behind me, not human, not rhythmic, not alive. A low, rattling exhale, like wind being forced through crumbling lungs. My blood ran cold. I didn't dare move. Do not turn around. That wasn't one of the written rules, but it felt like one. The breathing crept closer. I could feel its chill now, on my neck, behind my ears. My hands twitched, craving the flashlight, but I knew better. Some things didn't want to be seen. Then it spoke. Only one word. Name. The voice was wrong, layered, like 3 mouths trying to speak at once. One human, one in pain, and one that didn't sound like it had ever belonged to anything that should exist. Name, it hissed again. I didn't move. The forest waited, and then it stopped. No footfalls, no scream, no retreat, just gone. The air lifted. My pulse thundered. I checked my watch. 3:33 a.m. on the dot. And then something changed. The ribbon on my wrist untied itself. Not unraveled, untied. The knot loosened with surgical precision and slipped off, landing soundlessly in the dirt. It shriveled before my eyes, curling in on itself like burned paper until nothing remained. Whatever bond the forest had claimed, it had released it, for now. But just as relief started to settle in, I saw something new. Carved into the trunk of the oak, near the base, was a fresh line of letters. I hadn't noticed it before, but the second I saw it, my stomach turned. It was my name. First, middle, last, perfectly etched, still bleeding sap, and beneath it, another name. Not mine, but I recognized it. E. Blackwood. The same name I'd seen once on a mausoleum door, in a town I never meant to return to, at a mansion that had also given me rules to follow. This forest wasn't a one-time deal. This was a pattern, and somehow I was caught in the center of it. My name might be buried, but I wasn't free yet, because the forest wasn't done. The forest changed after 3:33. Not suddenly, not like a switch had flipped, but something subtle shifted. Like the rules of nature were being rewritten in real time. The wind returned, but it didn't blow through the branches. It circled low around my ankles. The trees no longer stood still, they watched. I felt it in their posture, in the way their limbs curved in my direction. I started walking again, slowly, deliberately. Rule 6. If a voice offers you a way out before sunrise, say nothing. Keep walking. That rule haunted me now, because deep down, I knew a voice would call. It wasn't an if, it was a promise. And sure enough, it began. At first, I thought it was just the wind playing tricks, a whisper brushing the edges of my ears. Hey, soft, male, familiar. I kept walking. The path was narrower now. The trees on either side had grown closer, pressing inward like a rib cage. My flashlight flickered again, the beam dulling. But I didn't stop. I didn't speak. Hey, the voice repeated, this time louder, closer. Then came a name, my childhood nickname. Nobody in years had called me that. Nobody alive anyway. The voice followed me. It's me, buddy, it said. It's Dad. My legs nearly buckled. The forest knew. It knew who to use. My father died 6 years ago. Sudden heart failure. Gone in a blink. I never got to say goodbye. Never got closure. Just a funeral, a folded flag, and a locked-up silence that never really left me. I gritted my teeth. The voice continued. I'm here. I've been trying to reach you. It was uncanny. Almost perfect. The cadence, the tone, the slight rasp on his R's. But almost wasn't enough. Because I remembered what my father's voice didn't have. An echo. This one did. a faint doubling, like it was bouncing off the inside of something hollow, like it came from a mouth that didn't have a tongue, or lungs, or a soul. I walked faster. The path dipped sharply ahead, sloping into a ravine. I stumbled but didn't fall. My hands clenched at my sides. Then another voice joined. My mother's. This one was worse. She's still alive. But the voice didn't care. "It's your mom, sweetheart. Something's happened," it cooed. "You need to come back. You've been gone too long." My vision blurred with tears. I hated how much I wanted to believe her. "You're not supposed to be here," she whispered. "This place isn't safe." I knew that. I knew it. But the temptation to answer, to just say something, itched in my throat like fire ants crawling up my windpipe. So I bit down on the inside of my cheek. Hard. The metallic taste of blood anchored me. I kept walking. They kept talking. Voices from old memories now. My brother, my best friend from college, my first love. All dead or gone or unreachable. Each voice offered an out. "We can show you the exit. You're almost there. Just say you want to leave. Just say it." That was the trick, the loophole. They couldn't take me unless I spoke first. That's what Rule 6 was about. It wasn't just silence, it was power. Saying nothing meant giving nothing. As long as I said nothing, they couldn't take anything. But then came the last voice. My own. It echoed softly in the trees beside me, speaking in perfect mimicry. "Help," it whispered. "Please, let me out." That one broke me, because I believed it. For a terrifying second, I believed that was me. That somehow I was trapped in the wrong body, and the real me was stuck in this nightmare, trying to claw my way back in. My jaw trembled, but I stayed silent. My footsteps quickened as the forest around me blurred into streaks of black and silver. The flashlight sputtered its last breath and went dark in my hand. And still the voices circled, desperate now, angry. "You don't belong here. You'll never leave. You think you're safe because you're quiet? You think the sun will save you?" I didn't reply. I didn't even think in words anymore, just motion, just direction, just forward, until light, thin, pale, weak, but real, breaking over the horizon like a miracle filtered through smoke. The trees hissed, not figuratively, literally. A low, retreating hiss, like steam escaping from hundreds of tiny mouths. The voices stopped. I looked up. The forest had stilled again, but this time the silence felt like defeat. Sunrise was coming, and I had not spoken. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, just a whisper of orange edging along the treetops, but it was enough to make the forest recoil. The air had changed. Lighter, yes, but also sharper. I thought things would get easier once dawn began. They didn't, because that's when I saw the others. It started with movement ahead, shuffling, slow and unsteady. At first, I thought it was another trick, a leftover voice in a different skin, but the figure didn't speak. It barely moved at all, just swayed slightly at the edge of the path. As I stepped closer, my stomach tightened. It was a man, or rather, what used to be a man. He stood hunched, arms hanging loose at his sides like his joints had been rearranged. His head was tilted too far, nearly horizontal, and his skin looked gray, like wax left too long in the sun. His mouth was slack, jaw half unhinged, but it was his eyes that stopped me cold. They were gone. Empty sockets, not bloody, not ruined, just missing. As if the forest had erased them, deciding he didn't need them anymore. He didn't react to my presence, didn't speak, didn't breathe, just stood there on the path like a post meant to mark something terrible. I walked around him, slow and deliberate. That's when I saw more. 2, then 4, then 7 of them, spaced evenly along the trail. All silent, all wrong. Men, women, a few young enough to make my chest ache. Each one had something missing. An eye, a hand, a voice, a name. The forest had taken something different from each of them, and I understood. These were the ones who broke the rules. One must have spoken to the voice that sounded like their mother. Another had probably followed the white doe, unable to resist its glow. Someone had touched the red ribbon tree. Someone hadn't buried their name. I passed one figure kneeling in front of an unmarked grave, digging, still digging, fingers worn down to bone, soil soaked dark beneath him. But no matter how much he dug, it was never enough. He never looked up. They weren't dead. That was the worst part. The forest didn't kill them, it kept them. Prisoners wrapped in flesh, trapped between sunrise and silence. It wasn't punishment, it was assimilation. I kept moving. The sun rose higher now, bleeding through the branches in slivers of gold. But even the light didn't fully reach this place. It stopped at the bark, repelled like it wasn't allowed to touch the roots. Then, ahead of me, something new. A gate. Wooden. Rough-hewn. Standing alone with no fence attached to it, just a frame in the middle of the path, bound in twine and hanging moss. It wasn't marked, but I knew this was the way out. And the forest knew it too, because just before I reached it, something stepped into the path. It wasn't like the others. It moved smoothly, easily. A tall woman in a pale dress, barefoot, with long black hair that dripped like it had been pulled from water. Her face was obscured, blurred like a smudged painting, but her voice was crystal clear. "You don't have to leave," she said it gently, not like the others, not like a threat, like an offer. "You made it this far. That's rare. That's special." I said nothing. She stepped forward. "You followed the rules. But why? For what? To go back to rent and bills? To empty beds and ringing phones?" My chest tightened. She knew. She knew me, and I hated how good it felt to be known. "You could stay," she said almost lovingly. "You'd never hurt again, never wonder, never doubt, just peace, just stillness." She reached out her hand, fingers long, perfect, familiar. My mouth opened, just slightly, the tiniest breath pulled in, and I felt it again, that pull, the same ache from the white doe, from my father's voice, from the ribbon that wrapped my wrist without touch. But then I remembered the man digging his own name into a nameless grave. I remembered the voice that sounded like mine, screaming in a forest that would never echo it back. And I took a step forward, past her, through the gate. She didn't scream. She didn't follow. She just said one thing as I crossed the threshold. "You'll be back." And I knew she wasn't wrong, because the gate didn't lead home. Not yet. There was one more rule left, and the forest never forgets a final test. Crossing through the gate didn't feel like waking up. It felt like stepping into a memory. Everything on the other side looked like the world I remembered. Dirt road, early morning haze, birdsong so faint it almost felt out of place. My car was there, parked crooked by the tree line, dew on the windshield, keys still in the ignition. But something was wrong. Subtle things. The trees behind me no longer looked like Black Hollow Forest. They looked ordinary, smaller, less ancient, but I could still feel the weight of them watching. I took a deep breath, the first one in hours that didn't feel like breathing underwater. I opened the car door, sat behind the wheel, and stared at my hands. They were filthy, scraped. My knuckles are raw, fingernails dark with soil, from digging, from burying my name. I checked my wrist. The ribbon was gone, but in its place, etched in faint red lines where the knot once sat, was a symbol. I hadn't seen it before. A spiral, tight and coiled, not a wound, not a scar, more like a brand. I turned the key. The engine hesitated, coughed, then came alive. I pulled onto the road and didn't look back. Didn't speak. I didn't think so. Not until I crossed the bridge back into town and saw the first sign that something had followed me. The billboard outside of town used to say, "Welcome to Edgemore, population 3,486. Now it said, "Welcome to Edgemore, population 3,485. I blinked. That couldn't be right, but there was no one around to ask. No cars, no early morning joggers, just empty streets and too much quiet. I drove home, trying to shake it off. Inside my apartment, nothing had changed. Same bills on the counter, same flickering light above the sink, same emptiness. I took a long shower, water scalding, scrubbing harder than I needed to, trying to erase something I couldn't see. But the spiral on my wrist wouldn't wash off. Neither would the dirt behind my ears. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw trees. Not just trees, rules, carved into trunks, whispered from the roots, echoed in my own voice from somewhere behind me. And at 3:33 a.m., the bathroom mirror fogged over, without steam, without cause, and one word appeared in perfect, wet handwriting. Name? I stood frozen, toothbrush still in my mouth, foam gathering on my lip. I didn't answer. I didn't even breathe. The word vanished. But the message was clear. The forest wasn't finished with me. Over the next week, more changes came. Tiny ones. My name didn't appear in my mail anymore. Credit cards declined, citing unverified identity. My driver's license, blank. Photo intact, information missing. Name, Marinha. Then came the dreams. Always the same. I'm back at the tree with the red ribbons. But this time, there are hundreds of them, tied not just to the tree but to me. Around my wrists, my neck, my ankles. Each one pulsing, alive, like veins outside my skin. And in the dream, I speak. Just one word. Something like, yes. And the moment I do, the tree opens its eyes, because that's what I realized too late. The tree wasn't a symbol. It was a mouth, and it tasted good. I stopped going to work, stopped answering calls. No one seemed to notice. No one came looking. Then, this morning, I found a new envelope under my door. Same moss green paper, same scent of pine and earth and something older. Inside was a single card, handwritten this time. You made it to dawn, but the rules never end. Your forest is growing, and soon someone else will enter. You will guide them. I turned the card over. 6 new rules, not typed, scrawled in my own handwriting. But I don't remember writing them. I folded the paper, slid it into my pocket, and walked outside. It was 11:59 p.m. The street light flickered overhead, and across the street, where the park used to be, I saw something new. A trailhead. No sign, just a gate, rough-hewn, wrapped in moss, waiting, and I knew what I had to do, because the forest didn't need to call me anymore. I belonged to it now, and someone else would be coming through that gate. Soon, they'd need rules, and if they followed them, maybe they'd survive. But if not, well, the trees are always hungry.